Welcome back YouTube. The day is finally come. We're going to start building the block today. It's just one video. We'll be building the whole block, but it probably will be spread over multiple days. One reason is I'm stuck for a tool. For the rods, I want to do it. You can do it with just torque, but you're meant to use a stretch gauge on the rod bolts. Obviously, I haven't got a stretch gauge. In the UK, it seems to be, you literally can't find one other than the ARP one, which is 220 quid, which I won't mind spending the money, but the problem is, I don't really build engines. I've never used a rod bolt stretch gauge in 15 years of being a mechanic, so I didn't really want to pay 220 for something I'm going to use once and put it in the bottom of my toolbox. So I managed to find a Carrillo one, which again is a good brand, so I thought, and it was 100 quid cheaper, so I ordered it. And then of course, they told me it wasn't in stock, so I've kind of been waiting on it. It was meant to come this week, it didn't come this week. I'm gonna ring the company on Monday. If they haven't got it, if they're not gonna get it this week, then I'm just gonna buy the ARP one. After I've used it, I might rent it out. So if anyone in the UK is looking for one, I'll rent it out. Basically, you just can't find them. In America, there seems to be multiple different brands, and you get them from all kinds of places. In the UK, it's just ARP or nothing by the look of it, except for that Carrillo one I found. But again, it's not in stock. But anyway, what we're going to start with, first off, I'm just going to clean the block down quickly. Obviously, I'm going to have to clean it multiple times, so I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm just going to try and clean out all the oilways, the boards, and everything, and then. You don't have to do it in this order, but I've decided I'm going to do the ring gap first and set them all out, set the rings out to get the ring gap done. After I've done the ring gap for all the pistons, then I'm going to spin it over, and then we're going to start doing the oil tolerances for the crank using plastic gauge. So we're going to go through all of that. If everything's all right, then obviously with the king bearings and everything and the ARP main studs, we'll build up the crank, so we'll get the crank rotating with the new bearings in. We'll do all the tolerances, the torque for the studs, and go through all of that. And then I might build the pistons up, and that'll be about it, and then it's going to jump to another day, but obviously it'll all be in one video, so you'll find it all in this video, because obviously I can't do it without the rod bolt stretch gauge. Well, you can, but from what I've read and looked into, it's recommended you use a stretch gauge. So I want to go over everything as perfect as I can. Before we get started, like I've said in the other videos, I have never built a Ford engine, and I've never built a VR6 engine. Been a mechanic for 15 years, but obviously so a lot of this is new to me, so I'm just trying to, I've got the specs from like JE for my pistons, and I've looked through as much as I can. So obviously anything I say is just to my best knowledge. And if you're following it to do it yourself, do it at your own risk, because obviously it's my third time, so I'm not no pro or anything. You might want to look at a different video if you're looking for someone that's tried and tested and has built these before. But without any further ado, let's start cleaning it down, and then we'll jump into the piston ring gaps. Right, what I'm cleaning it down with, this is brake cleaner, lint-free cloth. Right, so that's the block a quick clean down. Obviously I will keep cleaning it as I go along. It'll need more of a clean than that. It's not all done. But what I've decided to do is, I think the best thing to do is, obviously you're not going to want to see me gap every single cylinder. You only really need to see one cylinder doing the top ring, the second ring, and just checking the oil ring. It'll just be too long. We need showing you all six, and with me only doing it for the first time, what I've decided to do is I'm going to do one to five off camera, so I can get an understanding of what I'm doing. And anything I run into, I can kind of work it out whether. And then on number 6, that's when I'm going to show you doing not only checking it, but grinding it down, getting it all perfect, squaring it all up, doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm going to get to this now. I'll jump back to you in a second, and we'll get a close up, and we'll go through it all in a sec. So yeah, catch you in a minute. Right, I've done cylinders 1 to 5, and I've encountered one problem as such. So obviously this is the paperwork that you get with the JE pistons. I wasn't sure what to run, because obviously you've got street moderate turbo nitrous, the bore times 50 thousandths of an inch. But obviously I started doing a little bit of research, and it's generally people go a little bit higher, so I'm going to daily drive it, but then at the same time I'm going to do some circuit, some drag. So I was between the two, between the moderate turbo and the circle track and drag. So what I did is, basically this is the street one. Obviously you have to do, as you can see here, it says the bore times. So you work out what your bore is in inch. So my bore in inch is 3.307. So times by the 5th there, that would be the first ring. It'd be 17 thousandths of an inch. Obviously I've not got the point there or anything because I just did it for myself, but obviously that's 0.000 of an inch. And then the second would be 18. If you went track drag, it'd be 18 and 19. So apparently these engines can run hot. Your biggest problem is if you go too small and they touch together, then you ruin your engine basically. If you go too big, you're just going to get blow by, which you don't really want, but obviously it's not as detrimental as having it too small. With it only being like 1/1000th of an inch difference, I decided to go for the track drag. So what I've done is, you can see the different cylinders here. Obviously I've gone 18. It's so hard when you're measuring at that kind of level. I'll show you when you get over to the block how awkward it is, because I'll show you when I do number 6. But basically I've done them to 18, but they were kind of, I feel like most of them were almost like a loose 18, a tight 19. That's why I've put dash 19. I would say that in measurement they would actually be all 18, varying on the edge of 19. Then the second one, this is where I don't know what to do. I'm gonna have to speak to ProRace about it. Basically, as you can see, whichever one you went for, on the second ring, it should be, if you went for the top one, which I'm not doing, it'd be 18. And the track drag, it should be 19. So this is what I should be aiming for on the second ring, according to the JE paperwork. Problem is, when I've measured it, about 4 of them have came out the box being already 22. So I haven't touched like 4 of them, and the one that I did touch was basically 21, but it wasn't quite squared, which again I'll show you in the block. But basically it was, the 21 went really easy in at the start of the ring, but when you start getting up to the cylinder wall, it got tight. So I basically just put it in the filer and took the edge off, and it made it exactly 22, and it squared it. So basically all my second rings are now at 0.22, and obviously I can't, there's nothing I could have done about it, because there's like 4 of them in grind. The other one I literally just took like the edge off it. I forgot to put the other one there. So I don't really know what to do. I'll have to speak to ProRace. I don't know whether this is acceptable, whether the distance, which there's like a maximum distance between these, whether this is too high. I don't know. I'll have to speak to ProRace. So I don't know what's going on. It's a long, tedious job, and I hope I don't have to do it. I hope I don't need a new set of rings after do this again. The only other one is the oil control. If you look on here, basically all it does is give a minimum. Gives you a minimum, no matter which one you choose on the application. The minimum gap for the oil ring, it's just minimum. These are what I was getting. Obviously, you've got two per piston, so they're all like 20 and 19, so that's fine. Like I said, I'm going to take you over and show doing cylinder 6 now. But to be honest, all this I've done, taking these hours, I might have to redo if all these second rings need redoing. And also, while I'm at it, I'm just going to speak to them about what their opinion is, because not only did they supply these JE pistons, I know that they build these engines. So I'll see what their opinion is on these, but on the first and the second, and just see what they have to say, really. So, but yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the arse, but it may be fine. They may just turn around and say, oh yeah, these are fine, just run them as they are. So what we'll do is we'll just get round, we're going to go do cylinder now. I'll spin the camera over so you can see close to the block, and we'll start doing cylinder 6. Right, a couple of things I want to show you before we start. For a start off, you really want to keep each rings with the cylinder it came out of. So what I've been doing, obviously the JE ones, they come in individual packets. So just number them. I've numbered it here and numbered it on the inside. So as I've done each cylinder, I've put all of them back in and numbered each one, so I know which cylinder. So we've gone like 1, 2, 3. Do you know what I mean? So we know which cylinder each ring's for. Right, so this is your top ring. For a start off, put a little bit of oil in the bore. Don't go over the top. I'm using ATF just because it's thin. Just so it doesn't drag, basically. You don't want to go mad with it, because obviously I don't know how much it would change the tolerance with oil in the bore, but I'm literally just putting a little bit in. So obviously with the end at the top, all I'm doing is I kind of pinch it together, get it in halfway down, and then just spin it round like that. And then this is the next thing I want to show you. There's two things with it being a VR6 engine. Obviously the cylinders are on a slight slope. What you need to do is you need to level the rings out. Now your problem is the pistons are not flat topped. Usually most people would use a piston to basically push it down to make it flat, basically, so it's level inside the cylinder. The problem is you can't do that with a piston on a VR6, because if you've ever seen them, they're sloped. I had this made with a 3D printer, which is basically just a piston stopper. So once you've swung it in, there is a piston ring leveling tool as well. So if you don't know someone with a 3D printer, that'd be your next best option. Obviously remember when you're pushing it in, the fact that this is again on angle. So what I've been doing is I've been pushing it down till it's probably just below the higher side as such, and then I'll take it back out, and then you can see, I don't know how well you can see on the camera, but you've basically got your ring gap there. Again, with the feeler gauges, they come on a big pack. I've actually separated it because it was doing my head in having to hold the whole thing, and they're all spinning round. So what I've been basically doing is, obviously this is the 0.14. That's what I've been starting with, because I find that generally, see, it's a little bit tighter than, see, that's a little bit tight. So obviously straight out of the way, it's way too tight. They've all been around this. They've all been around 14 when I've brought them out on the top ring. Right. So what we've got is the N is on the top. You only want to grind one side of the ring. It probably doesn't matter which one, but I've done this on every single one. I've gone on the opposite side that hasn't got the N. So the N on there, I've just gone this side every time. Let's try and spin it a little bit. You basically want to push the ring. This part of the grinder is tapered, so just push it against there, and then you will just want to go counterclockwise. Obviously you are going to fix this down, that's why there's a little bracket, but obviously I wanted to do it in my toolbox, so I've just been holding it still. It's worked fine, to be fair. Again, this, if you look, this moves quite a lot. I'm guessing it's just because it's a cheap one, but when you're pushing against it, it doesn't really matter, because it kind of like holds it in place. And I'll just give it a little wipe. I'm only going to show you this once because it's too much effort going backwards and forwards with the camera. So I'll just show you this once, and then I'm just going to leave the camera looking at the board, and then I'll keep coming backwards and forwards until we get it right. Not going to lie, this is an extremely tedious, long job. It took me hours to do the other cylinders. Just do it a little bit at a time. Sometimes, I mean, there's a few times when I've done it and it's literally hardly made any difference whatsoever. But I'd rather do that than have a problem. What I've been doing with this as well, once I put it in, I just kind of spin it around just to make sure it's completely level. So let's pick the 14 back up. The other thing is, when you're doing it, you need to remember that the ring is slightly cockeyed in the cylinder. So when you're doing it, don't be trying to like hold it straight like that. You've got to think it is like slightly to the side. That was one mistake I was making at first. See, 14's nice and loose now. Well, I'd say nice and loose, but it's not tight. 15. Yeah, 15's tight, so I'm gonna have to go at it. I'll try and get a better light as well because my hand's blocking it. And 16. The other thing you need to make sure, again, I don't know how well you can see this, you want it to be square. What some of them have been like is basically, say you've got a 16, you'll get the 16 and it will only go like halfway in. So near the end of the cylinder wall, it's slightly tighter because it's not quite square. And then you have to kind of, when you're grinding it a bit more, try and cock it. I mean, it's kind of awkward, you need to be careful when you're doing it, but try and cock it a bit so you're taking some more off the outer edge. This one looks quite square, so it doesn't matter, but you do get that problem. The other thing is as well, sometimes when you go to do one and it's a little bit tight, it kind of knocks the ring a little bit. So what I've been doing is when I triple check it, when you start getting close, keep pushing the piston, the ring down a little bit with your piston stopper to make sure. I'll try and do this angle just so you can see. See that 17, that feels nice, but I think we're there. And what I've been doing is getting there, when I feel like I'm there, I'll get the next size up just to see if it'll fit. Yeah, see, I've done that on a few of them. I've gone a bit too far. See, it's, like I said, it's awkward because of the angle. See, I can get 19 in, that's what I was saying. It's kind of on the edge between 18 and 19. See, I think a builder would probably class that as 18 because you're only meant to get slight resistance. See, I can get it all the way in, but it's quite stiff. So obviously we're gonna leave it as that. Yeah, that's a 19. So I can get a 19 in, but I have to kind of work it a little bit. Let's push it down a little bit further, triple check. Yeah. Right, so now we've done that, what we want to do is file it a little bit. Got it. This is like a jeweler's file, it's really fine, and I've dipped in a little bit of ATF. On the edge that you're doing, like a 45-degree angle, I just go one way because it feels like it snags going the other way. I know that me doing this pot is going to go down, but I'm going to clean the block again anyway, so it just helps hold it still. So about a 45-degree angle. This is just to get rid of any burrs. And spin it around. Let's see what this one measures at. Let's see if this one's still big as well. Right, what I'm going to do is, because all the other ones have been big, should we start off with, let's start off with 19. Drop straight in. It's 20. 21. 22. Obviously it's catching a little bit. I'm going to push it down a little bit. Check it again. Yeah, see, that's a bit stiff. I'd say this one's about 21. Yeah, so it's more like 21, you can get 22 in, but yeah, I'm going to class that one as 21. Obviously all the others I've done to 22 because obviously they were already at 22. I'm just going to leave it as 21 at the minute, just until I speak to Pro Race and see what they say when I tell them this one was this 21. They might say just go on a little bit off, get it to 22, so they're all the same. I can get the 22 in, so the difference is minor anyway. So that one's done. Right, off camera, I've cleaned everything up. The block's been all cleaned, the mains have been cleaned. I've got the King Race bearings already in the main caps basically. So I've already put them in, ready. I've obviously got to put the bearings in this side. First off, what we need to do though is the oil jets. The oil jets go in these holes. I've got brand new ones. I've just sat them in oil just in case, but they basically just go in like that. I have to re-wipe that after. And then screwdriver. You don't want to be forgetting these. You might be thinking why it's red. I just use ATF just because I had some already out. To be honest, you probably don't need to put these in oil. I just thought it'd be a good idea so they're not dry. That's it, all slid in nicely. Right, now I need to wipe this ATF off. Obviously, because we're checking it with plastic gauge, these all need to be completely dry, no oil. Obviously, these are meant to be lint free. Go back over that again. You can't get them wrong because water on it. I've washed all of these down with like hot soapy water, and I thought I'd dry them off. This one's a bit dry. I'll rub them again before they go in. But basically, you've got the notch in the block. So you just line the notch up. Just push it all the way down. You want to kind of feel it flush. Right, they're all in. Now it's time to get some plastic gauge. I'm going to plastic gauge the top and the bottom, just for a little bit extra. Right, that's it. The battery was down on a GoPro, and you didn't need to see me struggling on that. Basically, I've got a piece on every. Well, this is the top. So what I'm going to do is now, I'm going to grab the crank, we're going to sit the crank in, then I'm going to put plastic gauge across all the top ones as well, just to double check, and then we'll put the caps on. I've got the ARP studs and stuff, we'll go over that, we'll have to tighten it down to torque, and then we'll check it. So yeah, for now, just a bit out of the way. The crank has been polished, I've also just cleaned it again. One of the biggest things now is I've got to try and get it in and make sure it doesn't turn whatsoever. I think that went alright. I thought the other side was awkward. This one's going to be even worse, trying to get them in that little gap. It's all into pieces. This is the biggest piece. I'm just going to put this on here. I don't know how important it is to get straight, but I feel like it's going to be easier to measure if it's straight, about parallel to the crank. That's it. Obviously you've got the ARP studs. Now with these, I watched a few videos and looked at some data before. Apparently if you screw these all the way down, you don't get enough thread coming through. So it seems like what most people do is wind the nut down just to see until you can see thread coming through. Put the washer up and then wind it in until it obviously seats, kind of thing. You don't want to be pulling the caps down using it, but until it's seated, tap them down, and then when it seats, then do the nut up basically. So I'm just lubing all these up. You need to make sure you lube. I'm using a brush, but you want to be lubing both threads. The nut, well, you don't have to do the nut because the nut goes on here, but I do the face of the washer as well. And what I'm doing is until you can see the thread come through. You could put a bit of lube on the head of the bolt, and then the washer. Cover the face of the washer. Isn't it really awkward? Put it on like that. Obviously, as you can see, the bearing's already in there. Again, it's got the peg there. It's self-explanatory. Make sure you clean it all before. Clean the back side of the bearing. Clean the cap. Obviously, no lubricant or anything yet. And then obviously the studs, and then just put it in. So what I'll do is I'll just do it to cheers. Right, then I'm just going to repeat that for all of them, then I'll tap them all down, and then we'll come back and tighten them up. So, right, I've touched them all down, but they're probably not seated. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to tap. And touch them up again. As you can see on the torque spec, it's 60 foot-pounds. Now you want to work out the way to do it as well. You really want to be working from the inside out, just so it evenly spreads out. The other thing I've got to say as well, I don't know if you noticed, but I did have the crank balance. I've had the crank balance, the pistons, rods, everything's been balanced. So yeah, it should run sweet when it's done. Right, so what I'm going to do to even it out, I'm going to start with 20. I'm still even going to even it out, even though I need to start with 20. Now we're going to go 40. So I've took all the caps back off. I've actually already checked it myself. I'll bring you in to check it. But obviously I'm going to take the crank out and double check underneath. Apparently the clearance should be between 0.2 and 0.6 millimeter. So if you put this on here, see, look at that, that's near enough bang on, so that's 0.25, and then there's a couple that are a little bit thinner, but they're all pretty close. I've checked them, they're all within tolerance. Yeah, see, I'd say that's crack on. If anything, it's slightly smaller, so it'd mean it'd be a bit bigger than, so the wider it is, the less tolerance you've got. This side's a millimeter. See, like that one's about about 0.38. They need to be between 0.2 and 0.6, so I've been over all of them. Right, that's it. It's all cleaned off. Cleaned off the crank, cleaned off all the bearings. A lot slicker than I thought it was. Right, so these are the ACL thrust washers. Obviously, usually you only get the 2, whereas this one's got the 4. These little groove parts, they want to be on the outside. The 2 go on the cap. Obviously, from standard, they just have the just these top ones. The thrust washers have stayed in, so that's a bonus. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the thrust washer cap on first. Welcome back. It's another day. I was going to carry on building the block up. Basically, I hit another problem. What my plan was, and what my plan still is that I was going to basically build up piston and rod, get all the rings on, get the bearings in, all of that kind of stuff, and then I was going to get it into the cylinder and do the plastic gauge for the rod bearings, and basically just build it up from 1 to 5, and then on the last one take you through it from building the piston and the rod up and all that stuff, and just go through the whole process for one cylinder, because obviously it's going to be too long showing you every cylinder, and with me being this is the first time I'm doing it, so I can learn from cylinders 1 to 5, and then on number 6 it just makes sense being able to show you what I've come across. And I only got to number 1 basically. Other than the rods and pistons are built up to 5. I'm going to show you the rod and piston now, but the problem I've got is this is an absolute piece of crap. I knew these could be a problem, so what I did was I've rubbed it all down, got it as smooth as possible, lubricated it all up, tried to run a piston through it, it's just scraping, feels awful. So I ran it through anyway, because it does tell you you're going to run it through a couple of times. So you run it through, there's plastic all over the piston, clean it off, done it again, done it 4 times. Every single time it's still just scraped, it feels horrible. I kept rubbing it down, and every time it goes through, it roughs all the plastic up. And the other thing is, if you get the ring gap between these grooves, I mean, it's just such a shit idea. I mean, you can't use your normal one for obvious reasons, as you can see. It's because the top of the head will be flat, but the cylinders are on an angle, so you have to have a special tool to do it. You can't just use any normal ring compressor. So you have to use a special tool. This is the OEM tool. It's just shit. It is absolute shit. I kept going through over and over again. I got it to the point where it kind of felt all right. I edged it in a little bit at a time. I kept poking the screwdriver through the end just to make sure all the rings were pushed in, making sure it wasn't trying to cock any of the rings or anything. And I got it a bit into the cylinder. I just tapped it a couple of taps. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel right straight away. I thought, no, I'm not happy with that, I'm not going anymore. So I spun the engine over, used a big screwdriver, pushed it out into my hand, and this is what we had. I don't know how well you're going to see that. But basically, it is chipped. This is ring number 2. Obviously, when I say ring number 2, it's piston 1, but it's the second ring down. It's not the top ring. It's the second ring, and it's chipped it. So I'm basically stuck. There's no way I'm using that. Not a chance. I posted it up on a group, on the R32 turbo group, and basically everyone was saying there's a company in America that do one, but it's a pain in the arse getting it from there, and I'm only going to use it once. Most people were saying do it by hand, as in put them on, sit it on the first ring, squash it in, it'll drop down to the next ring, squash it in by fingers, and just be really careful. So I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do. Obviously I'm going to have to get onto Pro Race tomorrow, order another set of rings just for one piston. I haven't tried to get any of the other pistons in or anything, so all the others are all right. I have built up cylinders, well, 2 to 5 basically, because number one is built up, but it just hasn't got piston rings on it, because obviously I'm going to have to redo it. So all I'm going to do now quickly is I'm going to show you how to build, well, I'm going to build the rod up and piston and do it as to the best of my knowledge. So I'm going to get the camera up close, and we're basically going to build this last piston up. I'm going to wrap it up, and then again we're going to end up jumping to another day when I've got another set of piston rings, so where we can actually get the pistons inside the block and finally get this this build cracking on. So without any further ado, let's get the camera around, and we'll build up the piston, the rod. We'll go over it. What we're going to do is we're going to put the rings on, the pin. We're going to do all that. We're going to put the circlips in, we're going to put the bearings in, and yeah, let's get to it. Right, I'm going to try and show this as best I can. It's hard to get the camera in a position that's right. First thing I'll show you is that I did have everything balanced. That's why I got paint on here. Each piston and wrist pin has got a set colour, so they're all balanced together. The pistons aren't, not the pistons, sorry, the rods aren't. I think that's due to, he's basically said he's weighed all the rods to be exactly the same, so all the rods should be exactly the same, and then he's just done the piston to the wrist pin. So for a start off, what you want to do is you want to put one of the clips into the piston. Now what I try and do is, you want a little screwdriver like this, and it says on the JE paperwork you're meant to have it on a 90-degree from this little cutout. So what I've been doing is, if you line up one end of the pin to about where the line, basically the bottom of the piston there, so I just took it in about there. I'll spin it around because it's easier. So if you put it in about there, so it starts here, and then about where this is, where the cutout is, basically just get the screwdriver awkward as fuck. You see it's in, but it's just not down. There you go. You had it clip, so that's one in. You'll basically have the other bit of the ring gap will just be around here. Right, once that's in, you want to get your rod. Right, now I don't know how important this is, but I bet, because I was confused which way the rod goes around. I don't think it actually matters, but what I noticed on the originals is, do you know where the cutouts are for the where the bearings sit, basically, the little notch on the side where the notch is, it seems to be the lower side of the piston. So the shallow part of the piston on all my stock rods and pistons, I didn't take them apart, so I got them all together. Basically, on every single one, the notch inside the main goes on the short side of the piston. Right, so this one, Right, so that one's got the clip in, and you spin it around that way, and then the notches are this way, so the notches want to be on the same side. So get a bit of, I'm using ATF, but you can use what you want. There with your little finger. Just oil that up. I also put some on the wrist pin as well. I don't really know how much I'm going to put on. So obviously I just line it up through. I also been matching the colour up side as well. Again, won't really matter, but I also found some of these seem to be tight a little bit, but then if you just run them through for a sec. There we go. So there are my little towels. After I've put it in, just because it's got a bit of oil on it, I've just been drying that out a little bit, just so when you put this pin in, it's not got oil in it. Right. Again, 90 degrees, so I'm putting this end up in that top corner, up there. Again, I don't know if this is right, but to me, there means 90 degrees is about there. Right, now what it says on the JE paperwork is that you should use a copper drift to basically hit the wrist pin to make sure it's seated properly. So, I mean, I'm sure you can use one that's not copper, sorry, brass. So this is a brass punch. I don't know how hard you're going to do it or how detrimental it is to do it, but right, so there we go. Obviously I just like to make sure the wrist pin will knock backwards and forwards against the stop, against the clip. Obviously make sure it pivots all right. It feels fine. It's all lubricated up, it's all nice. The shallow side of the piston is on where the notches is. Colours are on the same side. Next thing to do would be to start putting the rings on. Now what I put on first is, I tried a few different ways, and the way I found easiest was to put this one on first. Obviously you've got the oil control ring, and then you've got these two others to do with the oil control. You get one top, one bottom, so basically it looks like that when it's on. I just find it's easiest to put this one on first, because if you put one of these on, this one's awkward now because it's wider. It just makes it a little bit awkward, so I found it's easy. This one's super easy to put on anyway. You just obviously with all of these you want to try and offset them. I won't be doing that right now just because these are going to go back in a box and not get fitted directly to the engine, so they'll probably move around. I will offset them before they go into the cylinder, so I'll show you that when it gets to it. But if you're putting them straight in, that's something you want to be doing. And then this one, I actually found it is easier to put this top one in, to put it in the top first, you know, just so the next one that goes down kind of goes over it, doesn't try and jump into the slot. Again, that one's super easy. These ones are all easy. It's the other ring, the second ring down. I found that one the pain in the arse. Also find instead of working at the ends, it's easy to like get it in a little bit and then kind of work it round gently. Last bit here. So actually put the bottom one in last. Obviously when you've got them in, you just want to make sure they rotate nicely, which that does. Right, now this one is the pain in the arse one. This is the second ring down. It actually goes in that slot. See, there's multiple slots. This slot here is not actually a proper slot, so you want to ignore that one. The second ring one goes into this slot here. that one isn't actually a slot, and then the top one actually goes in there. What you'll have is, I don't know where you can see, there's a little N. That means that's the top. You get it on the top ring as well. This one will have an N. Make sure the N is on facing the top of the piston on both. Right, so this is the awkward one. I've been kind of working it down, so I get it in kind of, yeah, kind of like that. See, this one's quite far down, so I'll just get that straight in, and I kind of pull this round a little bit, and then just, yeah, see, that weren't too bad. So you can just put it in. I find it's best to just squeeze them together and see if they run round, because obviously that's how they're going to be. So just hold it together, spin round, it's all nice and free. Last one, make sure your end's at the top again. Kind of try and stick it in a bit, and then I kind of twist it, but only ever so slightly, because obviously you don't want to deform it. There we go. So then I'll just squeeze them all together. Everything feels all nice. So that's done. Obviously, before you put it in, you want to lubricate all that, but I'm not going to bother doing that right now, just because these are going back in a box. Right, and then I'm going to crack these off. These are the ARP 2000 rod bolts, which are 11mm multi-point, if you're wondering what size they are. Like that, and then these are quite tight to get off, just because they've got dowels. You also can't get in the wrong rod. I don't know which rods you might have if you're following it for yourself, but these are numbered. They've all got different random numbers on, so you can't get them mixed up. 068, 068. They all say 21C, I'm not too sure what that is. So yeah, separate that. And then what I've been doing is just getting my towel, get a bit of brake cleaner. I mean, these are brand new rods, so they should be clean. It's just for double checking. Let's give this one a little spray. Now, as for the bearings, I have already washed these. You're going to get like a scouring brush, not a brush. It's like a scouring pad, like what you'd wash dishes with, like hot soapy water. Just clean the back of it, because some of the coating on here also gets on the back. But when you basically wash it and scrub it a little bit, it all starts coming off. So these have already been cleaned. Obviously, you've got your notch there. Like I said, the notch goes on the shallow side of the piston. Obviously, you've got your notch there. So what I like to do is, again, like I don't know if this is the specific way you're going to do it. It's just the way I like to do it. I put the notch in, try to get it even, and I put the other side in, and then I kind of push both my thumbs on it just to make sure it's level both sides. So that's that side done. Get this one. White. Same thing again. Notch this side. Right, welcome back. It's another day. Obviously, I had the problem with the piston ring. Like I said, I was going to do the other cylinders first, which I have done. So we've got 1 to 5 are already in. Number 6, obviously, like I said, I was going to do it with my fingers to get the piston rings in. I'm going to show you that now. I've just seated this one in. I'm going to bring the camera close and show you how I did it. It's actually easier than I thought it was going to be fair. So I've done all the plastic gauge on all the others, the torque, the stretch gauge, all that stuff. I'm not too sure about that, but we'll get into it in a minute. But for now, I'm going to bring the camera close and we'll just go through the process of putting this last piston into the cylinder, and then that'll be it for the bottom end. So yeah, let's get it. Right, before we start getting it in, a couple of pointers. For a start off, don't put latex gloves on. Don't put any gloves on, because when you're trying to pinch it in to push it down, I kept having the gloves getting stuck and then having to pull the piston back up. So just do it with your hands. Obviously, just wash your hands first, get them all clean, get your rings and everything in. Obviously, I've already cleaned the bore. I've put oil on it. I've got everything's ready for it to go in. So obviously, make sure you clean it down, lubricate the piston and everything else. And then what you want to do is, what I've found anyway, push all the rings forward for a start to get it seated, and then you've basically just got to kind of work your way around to see anywhere where it's sticking. If you can't do it with your fingers, the only other thing is you can use a pick. Obviously, just be really careful with it, because you don't want to scratch the piston basically. It is a little bit awkward and fiddly, but I also found that it's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be, just doing it by fingers. When a few people told me to do it by finger, I was thought, if you get stuck, see like there, I haven't got the ring in properly, just try and rock it backwards and forwards like that. But you want all the rings forward, and it helps you out a lot. They do move a little bit, so you have to keep checking on them. Watch this one be the most awkward one. See? I think you don't want to go any more down. I think the the rod's hitting. Right, so yeah, that's it. Number 6 is now in. So what we'll do is I'll move the camera around, we'll spin the engine over, and then see from the other side. Right, now it's spun over. Obviously, the bearing, I don't know how you can see, but obviously the bearing is already in this side of the rod. It's all clean and everything. You need to make sure it's clean, but don't put any lube on it yet, because you need to do the plastic gauge. You can't have any oil or any kind of lubricant on it. So what I've been doing is, you just want to I've just been using like a Phillips screwdriver. Basically move the rod over to align it somewhat, and then just push up from the other side till you get it close. And when you get it close, like that, just put your hands in. There we go. So make sure your bearing's flush still and everything, which it is. Right, now you want some plastic gauge. Typical. You put gloves on really. It's just that condensation. Right. Obviously you need your cap to be clean with your bearing in. There is markings, obviously. All of them have 21C on for some reason, but obviously it's this one down here, 068. So you just have a look. Right a sec. Right, there's no right on that side. 068 is on there. So obviously this side's blank, so the blank goes to blank. 068 goes to 068. Sit it on there like that. ARP 2000 bolts. I'm just going to lube these up. I do it with a brush. You want to do the thread, and you want to do the washer as well, so it can spin round on the head. Alright, now they're both greased up. Come in. Now what I've been doing, because of the stretch gauge, it's a little bit of a pain in the arse. I found that most of them seem to be at about 45 foot-pounds. So what I've been doing is, to do the plastic gauge, I've literally just been going up to 45 foot-pounds and then doing the stretch gauge at the last bit. What I do is I start with 20. Now, get them to touch down first before I even start doing the 20. Just so everything's even, so it actually pulls the rod cap together before we start actually talking anything. See, once it starts grabbing, yeah, this one's grabbing. 20. 20. Then I'll go up to 30 foot-pounds. 30, then I'll go 40. You probably should be doing the stretch gauge every time, but it's a pain in the arse. I mean, some people don't use stretch gauge at all. Right, that's 45 foot-pounds. And just crack them off. So far, every single plastic gauge has been exactly the same, which is good. I'll tell you one thing's an absolute pain is getting these caps back off, because we've got dowels in. It's an absolute nightmare. I've worked a way out to do it with the punch. It seems to be the easiest route. The first one I did, I ended up turning the crank a little bit and it smeared the plastic gauge. I had to do it again. Back out. What I did is I got like this punch, I put it in just a little bit, just so it doesn't go into the bottom of the rod. I just, yeah, cock it a little bit like that, and then like that. Now this one's in millimeters, not inches. All the others, I don't know how well you can see, all the others have been 0.51, which is exactly what this one is. 0.051. Find the what it should be. Apparently it should be anywhere from 0.02 to 0.07, and this one is 0.051, so I feel like that's a good middle line. Obviously the bearings and stuff are new, but the crank is used. So I would say that's pretty good. And the other good thing is they're all the same. I reckon they're all exactly crack on 0.51, so I'm happy with that. Next thing to do is clean the plastic gauge off. Apparently you can leave this on, but I don't really want to. Nice and clean. And what I do is push it back down enough to drop to one side. I get the light. Don't know how well you can see in there, but basically the bearing still looks nice and clean. So then, doing is I've just been putting this on my finger. I'm just trying to get around the back side. I was trying to get it on the bearing before, but it kind of makes a mess. You can't get in there very well, so I've kind of just been wrapping my finger around the underside of the crank. Stuff's so stringy. Trying to get it right under. I don't know if I'm using too much of this or not enough, or what. Well, I don't think I'm using not enough, but right, once it's lubricated, just do the same thing again. What I've been doing, I've been going in the thread hole with a Phillips screwdriver, get it somewhere close, push it up till it gets a little bit round the crank, and just getting your fingers under. That's it. What I've been doing as well, this one looks alright, but I've just been trying to make sure I don't get the lubricant on the face of the rod. It might make no difference, but still when you're squashing it together, you don't really want the grease in there. I'm sure it'll just squash it out, but that's it. Do have a bit of the plastic gauge in there as well. You just want to clean that off. Right, obviously cap back on. Same again with the writing. Nearly put it the wrong way. This one's 68. I lubricate the bolts again just a little bit, just to make sure they're all covered. Right, so the stretch gauge and the problems we've been having. Obviously you've got a pin here and a pin here. Put it in the top first, push it down, and then in the bottom of the bolt there's like a pin, so you want to move it round until it sits in. That's seated in, and then just kind of move it around. Once it's seated everywhere, just like move it around, make sure it's all aligned, and then obviously you want to zero it. There. Right, now this is the problem, one of the big problems you get. Obviously I've zeroed that on this bolt, but you want to do the bolts a bit at a time really to even it out. Now your problem is, if I zero this on this one and then move it over to the other bolt, now spin. To turn this around quick there. You can see there, it's a little bit out. So it's 1/1000 of an inch up. What I've been doing is, when I've been doing the measurement, I've just been basically taking that into account. So when I've been tightening it up, obviously this is plus 1/1000 of an inch. So I've just been adding that on when I basically do the stretch. Again, you should probably do it up a little bit and keep checking it. All of mine have been around the same, so I'm just going to do it to the same and see what it stretches. So we're going to do the same as before. So all I'm going to do is 20. So I'll just go, obviously I'll get it touching first. I mean, I'm sure if you're an expert, you'd probably have 2 if you was doing it in a car. So that's 20. 30. 30. 40. 40. 45. The other thing I've been doing, apparently it's good practice, is once you've done it again, you're meant to torque them 3 times. So what I've been doing is the one with the plastic gauge, then putting them back in the second time when they're all lubed, and then just loosening them off and torquing them again, and then checking them. So one's touching. I was just doing it 20 by hand then. Just watching the gauge. 30. That's 40, then move it up. Right, so 45. Triple check them. Right, so that's 45. Yeah, see, I'm not too sure what these are exactly meant to be. When I sent these to the balancer, when they came back, the bolts were already in the rods, you know, to keep them all together because they've been balanced together. But when I've been doing 45, obviously it says 40 Newton meters, I know that, but I can't remember what the stretch was. But every single one that I've done to 40, I know that it was meant to be 40 foot-pounds, but then after watching a few videos, I've seen a lot of people around like 42, 43, maybe even more. So I've gone 45 to be safe, and I've got 0.5 on every single one. I am waiting for a bit more information, so I may come back and change this. I just wanted to get all the pistons in for now. But yeah, I've been getting 0.5 on all of mine. I think it makes a difference to what rods you've got as well. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, all of them seem to be around 0.5, so that's just what I've been aiming for. I'll have to wait and see if that's right. If it's not right, I'll basically crack them off and readdress that, and then on my next video, I'll give you an update on it. Just going to check it off, and I'm not going to spin the camera around just because it's a bit long-winded. I'll just let you know what this one says. Yeah, so this one says, this one's saying 0.6. Obviously it was, when we zeroed it, it was 0.1, so exactly again, we're on 0.5. I'm kind of feeling like 0.5 must be about right, just seeing as I've done all of them to like 45 foot-pounds and they've all been 0.5, so that, although I don't know what it's meant to be, I feel like the fact that they're all the same is a good sign, but I am going to find out the information, and I'll basically update you on that. So yeah, let's spin it over, let's turn it over, and we can see what it looks like spinning over. That's it. Checked all the bores and everything. There's no scorch marks or scratches or anything. Everything looks all good. So that is it. That is the bottom end done. I'll catch you on the next one when we start putting the head on and start building it up. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.